Hi friends, I recently discovered a hack for using punches that I have never seen anyone else do. I'm really excited about sharing it with you. I know you love to find new ways to use the products you already have in your collection. Let's take a look at it. For this video, I'm specifically using these 3 punches. Now I'll show you what I discovered, and then you can take a look through your punch collection and play around with this and see which punches in your collection this may work with. So these are from a set called the Inked and Tile Punch Pack. They come together. This one is called the Handmade Tag Punch. So we are going to start with this. I'm calling this one the star and this one the X, since they come in the same pack and they have the same name. We are calling this one the star. And let me show you what I tried doing. I was looking for ways to fold paper so that you could see both sides of a designer print. And certain punches that I've had in past years that I no longer have are designed to punch and then be able to fold the paper. And I didn't have any in my collection that would work at the time, but I was looking at my punches and I thought, I should be able to make these do that same thing. I just need to be a little bit creative with it. So what I am doing, I'm putting my paper in the punch. I can squeeze it and hold it tight without actually starting to cut through. And then I want to gently punch until I've punched. On most of these, I'm punching about halfway through and I'm leaving the other half unpunched. So for example, on this one, I just punched it to where it has punched this corner, this corner, this corner, and this corner until it has reached basically this inner point. So it has punched this whole point, this whole point, this whole point, this whole point, but not these other 4 in between. Now, as I did this, I played around, I got a little bit more comfortable with it, because at first I was afraid of cutting through. And then I got a little more comfortable and was able to cut a little bit farther if I wanted to. So how I am lining this up, I'm going to show you several ways to do this. I'll show you the results. I have some finished cards I want to show you. But just to show you how I'm lining these up, my end cut for that last one is right here. So I'm lining it up at the edge of my punch, and I am lining up top to bottom. I'm lining it up in the center. So I punch until I get about those 4 points punched out, but not the 4 in between. Now, to get this out, it may need a little bit of encouragement because those certain points are popped up and it may not slide back out real easy. So if you need to, you can push down on those, give it a little wiggle, and it should come out. So I'll punch one more, and then I want to show you what we can do with this. So what we can do is take those points and fold them down. Now, I would highly suggest using double-sided paper for this. All of our Stampin' Up! Paper is double-sided. I love that. When I don't love what's on one side of a print, I typically do like what's on the other side. I always have 2 options. So I can fold these in. Now I'll show you what it looks like if we fold all of them in, but keep in mind as you start to play around with this, you can really get creative, and maybe you would only do all diagonal ones, like alternate diagonals, or I'll show you here in a second that you could just do 1 row where this is doing 2 rows. You could just do 1 to create a border. We're going to look at an option for weaving ribbon in. We are going to look at quite a few different ways to play around with this. So because the punches don't punch evenly, like it's not punching out the entire shape at the same time, that metal piece, the metal pieces poke up higher in certain spots and punch those areas out first, we can do this, okay? So you can see what I have created here. Now here is one more option I will show you quickly, and then I want to show you my first card samples. I'll do this one more time, and I really like this option. Then you can punch this out. I think I'll fold these up first. I will mention, I found you can lay this down on your work surface if you want to, but I thought it was a little bit easier to fold these up if I held the paper in my hand. That way I can fold this piece back this piece is right there for me to fold up a little bit. So now that I did this, I'm thinking I probably better punch this out first, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to get that pulled back off of there. So we'll punch the circle out. This is a 1 3/4 inch circle. And now we can create these fun little designs. Now, if I wanted this print up, I could have reversed the way these were folded. But let's look at some samples of what we can do with this. So this is the star. We're looking at the examples from the star first. Here is a card that I created for a recent tutorial where I was sharing ways to see both sides of your designer paper on the same project. Like I said, that was when I discovered how to do this. So what I did, I used this designer paper. I punched several of these side by side like I showed you on the strip, folded them in, and I thought it would be really fun to put a small circle in the center. So this is a 3/4 inch circle. This was a stamp set. We have a special offer going on right now. It's called Celebration. You can get some really great products for free. This Cradled in Love stamp set that I used to complete this. This is one of the options that you can get for free, and I'll show you several others. This paper pack, Sunny Days, that I used here, that's another one. So this border right here is one option. Now let's look at another one. So this one probably doesn't look very much like this one, does it? Now let me show you how I did this one. I took my strip of paper, my piece of paper I should say, that measures I think 3 3/4 by 5, and I started to run this punch along the edge with just half of the paper in the punch. So I'm lining up the bottom of the paper at these points, and side by side I am lining up the same as I was before. So I'll do this first one, and then I am going to move until the edge of the punch lines up with that last cut. That's the way I did all of this over here. Let's do one more of these. So with what I'm doing right here, you could create a border like this, or you could create a really narrow border, and you could cut these down into strips and use them in unique ways. So I folded these in, and I could have left it like that, but I had been wanting to play around with weaving some ribbon through these, and this seemed like a perfect chance. So here is the sample of basically what I did. I did several of these, and here's another option. You could flip these over and just see the openings as well if you wanted to try that. There's lots of ways to use these. So this is a gorgeous paper pack. I'm going to show you more cards made with this amazingly beautiful paper here in a second. It's called Perennial Lavender, and we'll see this stamp set here again in a minute as well. Now let's move on to the other punch in that same pack. Again, this is from the Inked and Tiled punch pack. I'm calling this one the X. So let's grab another piece of paper. I'll show you quick example of this, and actually let's just do a single on this one. So on this one I discovered I could punch just a little bit, or I could keep going and get some different effects on this one. That was a little bit too far right. So let's try again. Actually, in all of the punching I've done, believe it or not, that is the first time I punched through too far. So get this out. We'll punch this one out with the circle again. I really liked how this one turned out when I punched it with the circle. Fold those pieces in, and we can do this different ways. Let's do it with the dark side this time. So then these pieces, we start getting these really fun designs. So we could leave it the way it is. We could put it over top of a 2-inch circle punch and have that color showing behind as well as the border around the edge. We could put a little tiny circle right on top here. You could put a gem, a rhinestone or something right there and hold these in place. Lots and lots of ways to use these. Let's look at a card sample here. So here is one. Again, I was using these Celebration free products right now. I love this embossing folder. I'm hoping you can see that. It's called Softly Sophisticated, and it comes with a stamp set as well. And then this stamp set is called Heartfelt Hellos, another free option. This is that same paper I showed you on the baby card a minute ago. So I created these, punched them out with that circle, and then just created a fun design. Isn't that cool? You could use these, you could line them up in a row and have 3 of them. There's a lot of different ways you could use these. Here is one I created with the X. It's a border. I didn't finish this and turn this into a finished card, but this gives you an example of what it looks like. You can just use plain cardstock as well. If you want to get the effect of seeing a different print on your folds than on the top side of the paper, then definitely use your designer paper, but you can do this with cardstock as well and get really neat results. So I thought about trying to weave. There's so many options. I was going to try to weave some more ribbon in here. You could go in straight lines. You could go down and back. You could do diagonals. I thought about trying to make a little wreath of woven twine or something on some of these. Lots of options that you can play around with. Last but not least, let's look at a couple of examples with this handmade tag punch. So we'll try this one on a piece of cardstock. With the cardstock, it's a little bit of a different feel. I think cardstock is a little bit more difficult to work with because you do have to press a little bit harder, but again, you don't want it to press all the way through and cut all the way through. So you can play around with this, but let's fold these pieces in. I really love how these cards I'm getting ready to show you turned out. So we have a pattern that looks like this. So let's look at some finished cards. Here is a slimline card. So I did 3 of these in a row, and I wanted a way to put this all on one card. So a slimline card was perfect. The finished dimensions of this card are 3.5 by 8.5. And I do have a good tutorial on how to make a slimline card. If you have not made any before, I will link to that in the video description below. So I used this Perennial Lavender designer paper. You'll see it on my next card as well as this shimmer paper in the background. Hopefully you can see that and appreciate that. I love how that shimmer shows through here. And this stamp set, these vertical greetings, I thought were just perfect for this. So here is the one that I made with the handmade tag, and let's look at the second one. I'm not sure which one's my favorite. I would love for you to vote in the comments and tell me which one of these you like better. So for this one, I just did one of those designs. I cut it out with a stylish shape die and then mounted it onto the squares in the background, which I had turned to look like diamonds, added that vertical greeting. Do you ever put something on a card and you want to use a certain background, but it's just too busy? This is a perfect way to take a busy background and tone it down a little bit so that whatever is in the front of your card gets the attention. Just put some vellum on there. So I just put that strip of vellum, and I thought it was the perfect way. I loved this purple background, but I wanted to tone it down just a little bit, and I used that vellum for it. So these are my card samples. I would love for you to try this out. Find some new ways to use your punches. I would love to see your examples. And if you want to stick around, I'll flip my camera around. We'll chat for a second. So not too long ago, I shared with you some different things about my faith. And I wanted to share with you a verse that I was reading in the Bible the other day. It's probably been about 2 years ago now. I set out to read the entire Bible. I've never done that. That's pretty terrible, right? I should be old enough to have read this whole thing. But I started with the New Testament. When I finished, I went back to the beginning, and I have gotten all the way through Psalms. So I'm getting pretty close. It's going to take me a little longer, but I was the other day when I was reading this, I was in Psalm 37, and I'm reading verse 4 here. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. I feel like in so many ways, we expect God to take care of us when we are not pulling our own weight. And I know for much of my adult life, I definitely fell into this category. I probably still do to an extent, but I'm doing a lot better than I did. But the beginning of this, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. I feel like we expect that God is going to take care of us and do all these things for us and save us from this pain in our life. But when we stop and think about it, are we truly being faithful? Are we taking time out of our day to spend with him? Are we stopping the busyness, quieting all the things, the phone and the TV and the turning off the social media, to delight ourselves in the Lord? What does that mean? I feel like that means we want to put everything aside and take some time every day. Maybe it's a little bit of time, maybe it's a lot of time to spend with the Lord. Pray, read our Bibles, meditate on Bible verses, whatever it is, but delight ourselves. Is it something that we do because we want to? Is it something that we look forward to? Or are we looking forward to being in our craft rooms? Are we looking forward to sitting down and binge watching whatever that new TV show is? Are we delighting ourselves in the Lord as well as delighting ourselves in these other things? Or are we just delighting ourselves in these other things and expecting God to show up and save us from our problems? I just think it was just something that struck me as I read through the Old Testament when I was I'm still in the Old Testament, but some of the previous books in the Old Testament. It struck me how often it said, and the words aren't coming to me right now, but basically, do what I say so that I can bless you. Do what I say so that I can bless you. So are we doing what we are supposed to? Are we spending time here and not just reading it, but applying all of this in our lives? If we can do that, the Lord tells us he will give us the desires of his heart. And I believe that. Hopefully you do too. Thanks for being here today, friends. I appreciate you. Hope you'll be back again next time when I'll be here helping you to handmake with love.